CoinDesk Insights team investigating how Bitcoin ETFs have fared outside the United States, offering a forecast of what could happen down the line when more Bitcoin ETFs are approved, if and when, by the SEC. Joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen Moore in Boston. Always a pleasure, Galen. So Canada, the True North Strong and Free, launched ETFs linked to Bitcoin futures as well as the spot price of Bitcoin earlier this year. What can they tell us about the U.S. foray into Bitcoin-linked ETFs?
You know, I think the clear takeaway, Christine, is that the potential of a futures-based Bitcoin ETF, at least if Canada's experience is any guide, is likely to be a very small fraction of the potential of a spot-based Bitcoin ETF. There's a chart, here it is in the report. That red dot is the Horizon Beta Pro Bitcoin Long ETF. It's a futures-based ETF that is about 7.5 million AUM. Only that's $7.5 million US dollars in AUM. Only about 0.3% of the aggregate assets under management in Canadian Bitcoin spot ETFs. So, you know, indeed, if the strong launch that we've seen on the futures ETF here in the U.S., you know, is either an indication
that it has a way to go. You know, Galen,
it could, yeah.
Well, Bitwise CIO Matt Hogan was saying that futures ETFs could cost an additional 5 to 10% per year to roll into new futures contracts at each expiry, alongside another 1 to 2% in fees, and only 85%. They'll have 85% exposure to the underlying asset, with the remaining 15% being invested in other asset classes. Spot ETFs track the price of the underlying asset much more closely, and as you mentioned, you know, well, according to Bloomberg, Horizon's front-month rolling Bitcoin index has returned 530% over the past 2 years, while Bitcoin itself returned 660% over the same period. So already we see ProShares, the Bitcoin futures ETF, bringing in 570 million of assets and registered a trading volume of 1 billion on its first day. So what does it say about the demand for Bitcoin long term, and how will that affect price?
You know, honestly, Christina, it reminds me a lot of Q4 2017, when we also had Bitcoin regaining momentum after a year in which it was mostly outpaced by Ether. We also had the arrival of a highly anticipated new financial product. In Q4 2017, it was Bitcoin futures themselves. And I think it was the lack of initial enthusiasm for the Bitcoin futures products that was a factor in the crash that then began in December and accelerated in 2018. You know, flash forward 4 years, and you again have Bitcoin outpacing Ether in October ahead of the launch of a highly anticipated institutional product. So what's different this time? I mean, look, for one thing, in this environment, I mean, first of all, like, can you even say anything about what's different between now and 2017? Everything. But there is evidence of real institutional demand today, and not just for Bitcoin. I don't know if anyone has noticed, but Ether futures on CME were about this close to crossing $1 billion in open interest yesterday. VC investment, as you noted earlier in this report today, is another notable data point that shows institutional demand. Meanwhile, cryptocurrency is increasingly mentioned alongside household names, right? Via NFTs. You've got Martha Stewart launching an NFT this week.
Yes, that's right.
You know, Martha Stewart did not do an ICO. So I think,
there's just a lot of
and then on top of that,
investment, yeah.
We have not seen disappointment in this widely anticipated financial product, right? It has outpaced expectations. The CME today had to raise the position limit on the Bitcoin futures product in order to accommodate the demand for this new futures ETF. So look, I mean, going back to this bubble chart, it's either something very different from what has taken place in Canada, or the eventual approval of a physical Bitcoin ETF will be truly astronomical in this space.
Galen, you mentioned institutional interest, and Grayscale CEO Michael Sonnenschein was tweeting a chart on GBTC versus BITO. Grayscale is CoinDesk's sister company, but tell me a bit about what we're seeing here.
So, I mean, this is, I think I looked at this chart a little bit earlier today as well. I think we're seeing, how is GBTC performing versus BITO? And I think, clearly this is showing some of the concerns that you highlighted earlier, which is that the futures-based ETF does not track the price of Bitcoin as accurately or as closely as a spot-based ETF does. So on a day like today, when Bitcoin's setting new all-time highs, you're not going to see your futures-based ETF participating in that run-up in the same way as you would a spot-based product like GBTC. Now, of course, right, Grayscale has been talking for some time about turning GBTC into an ETF. This week, they formalized that and set the clock ticking on an SEC answer, yay or nay, about whether that can happen. And certainly, if it does, that will be the largest product in the market by AUM.